Are you a reader looking for a good book? Or are you an author who has written a book? Good Books Online is the show that brings readers and authors together.
Welcome to another episode of Good Books Online, the show that answers the question, have you read any good books lately? Today with us is author Mark Goldwich, who has authored a book called Uncovered: What Really Happens After the Storm, Flood, Earthquake, or Fire. In fact, today, as a special treat, we actually got God to work with us because we have a storm raging outside right now, which kind of goes in with what you do because basically your business is to come in after the mayhem has occurred.
Exactly. Yeah, we help people after they've suffered a loss, whether it's from a storm or a fire, flood, whatever it is that might happen to their personal property.
But you're not an insurance agent, right?
No, we're not an insurance agent. We don't sell insurance at all. All we do is adjust claims, but we adjust it for the property owner, not for the insurance company.
Oh, you mean all those smiling people you see on the commercials don't come in and help you out as soon as the storm is done?
Well, they come in and help somebody out.
Okay, who do they help out, in fact?
They help out the insurance company
Right.
that they work for.
Exactly. You know, and a lot of people, they don't realize the fact until, you know, those smiling faces go away when they try to file a claim, because insurance is a business, and especially over the last few years, the insurance companies have been lobbying successfully to change a lot of the laws that make it very difficult for people to get what they feel they're due. In fact, how do they know what they're due?
Well, typically the homeowner or the property owner doesn't know
Right.
what they're due unless they have a professional helping them and guiding them and explaining what they're due. They don't know what they're entitled to under the policy. It's an insurance contract
Right.
with all kinds of legalese that they're just not familiar with.
Yeah, and some people don't even realize that they can hire somebody like yourself, a public adjuster, to jump into the fray. And if they don't, what happens in many cases, because I've read a lot of your blogs, is the fact that the insurance company obviously has the time, the money, and the manpower to wear them down. I mean, that's pretty much what they do, right?
Absolutely. Most people, the vast majority of people, have no idea that they can hire somebody to represent them. I mean, they know if they go to court, they can hire somebody to represent them.
Right.
They know if they're in the middle of a real estate deal,
Right.
they know they can hire somebody to represent them. But in the case of insurance, most people just don't know that they can hire a expert, a licensed person to help them with their insurance claim.
So if they don't hire somebody to help them, what typically happens? What's the policy of the insurance company? I mean, they'll send out somebody to appraise the damage, correct?
Correct.
And then what normally happens after that?
Well, typically the insurance company comes in and they tell the homeowner what they're going to get.
Right.
They say, we've done an analysis and here's what you're entitled to. And property owner gets it, they look at it, they don't really understand it, but there's a check, there's a letter, there's an estimate, sometimes there's a expert's report to go along with
Right.
it. And that's what they got to deal with, and they don't know what their next option is if they don't like that dollar amount.
What's the worst thing they can do in a situation like that? Cash the check?
Well, actually, typically now you can cash the check.
Okay.
Most checks don't come with a waiver attached to it or
Okay.
with a release attached to it, so that they can normally cash the check. But what they don't know is they don't know that they can fight it,
Right.
and they don't know how they can fight it. Most people, they think, well, if I call and complain or if I write a letter, that's going to do something.
Does that do something?
Not usually, no.
In fact, I noticed in your blog here, what are they up to now, which is on Good Books blog. You were talking about the insurance companies instituted something called repair cost control.
Yes.
Tell the listeners a little bit what that is, and whose cost does that control? Does it control the cost of the repair? Does it control the amount of money that they're going to actually pay the insured?
Well, obviously, it depends who you talk to. The
Right.
insurance companies, they will say, in order for them to keep premiums low, which they're not,
Right.
they have to find ways to cut costs or to manage costs.
Right.
They would say, not cut, they would say manage costs. And one of the ways that they do this is by using preferred contractors or even owned contractors. And now insurance companies are buying construction companies
Right.
and using them to do the repairs if they happen to determine that the loss is covered.
Okay. And does that usually work out well for the homeowners?
No, not usually work out too well for the homeowner. The homeowner now has somebody in their home that they
Right.
don't know, maybe don't trust, haven't vetted. They don't know if they're licensed. They don't know anything about the workers. Sometimes they're not even given an option on what repairs are going to be done to their property.
Okay.
Most homeowners, if you were to tell them that this is what might happen to them, they
Right.
just wouldn't believe you.
Okay, do you have some stories about naming names that you can share as to, what had happened to people before they called you in and how you kind of turned the tide for them?
Oh, sure. We have, all kinds of stories. We do this, hundreds of times a year that we help people out with insurance claims. And we had one recently where insurance company came in before we were involved, wrote an estimate. I think it was about $18,000. Then they depreciated it, and then by the time they were done, they sent a check for about $13,000. Well, the homeowner knew that wasn't going to cut it.
Right.
But she also didn't know what she could do about it. Luckily, her contractor told her about us. We came in, were able to go over it with the insurance company, and it did take a couple of months. It took about
Right.
4 months of handling back and forth and getting them to do the right thing that they should have done from the start. And finally, they paid about $34,000. So going from $13,000 to
almost triple.
$34,000
Right.
was a great deal for them.
I'm sure. So what gave you the inspiration to write a book about all this?
Actually, the inspiration came from just a friend of
Right.
friend of the family, and she's a motivational speaker, and she had written a couple of books herself. And one day, this was shortly after I had started public adjusting,
Right.
and was telling her just simple war stories like we just did. And she said, I had no idea that the insurance companies were like this or would do this to people,
Right.
as most people
Oh, yeah.
don't know.
How often do people actually file a claim? You'd be
Honestly-
paying for years and years and years and
Right.
years and years before something like that happens.
Yeah, I think the statistics are about once in every 8 or 9 years
Yeah.
that someone files a claim. And
Right.
a lot of people, from what I hear
Right.
from our own clients, they'll say sometimes it's 20, 30 years. I had a gentleman say he hadn't filed a claim in 55 years that he was with this
Right.
insurance company.
And what happens typically after you file?
Well, then the story changes
Right.
because he said, well, this is a great company. I've been with them 55 years. I can't believe they're treating me like this. I said,
Right.
how many claims have you had? He said, none. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You don't have any claims. They're going to treat you just fine.
Right.
But when you have that claim, the switch flips
Right.
from becoming the customer to the legal adversary. You're now trying to take their profits from them.
Right.
And you have to realize that.
Yeah, and most people don't. They don't have a clue. One of the things I liked about one of your other articles you were talking about was that you really need to go around your house with a camera and document all of your possessions because let's say a catastrophic flood, a hurricane, a fire destroys your property, completely destroys. I mean, when they had Katrina, I mean, literally there were houses that were erased.
Right?
How do you collect?
Right, exactly. If you don't have proof,
Documentation,
you
right.
have to prove your loss to
Right.
the insurance company.
Yeah.
You can't just say all of these things that you've collected for the past
Right.
20, 30, 40 years of
Yeah.
your life.
Yeah, we had
and
that
now they're
Picasso.
gone.
It was right over there.
Right.
They're not going to buy that, right?
No, they're not going to buy that, but they also may not buy the simple, framed picture that you got from Walmart either.
Right.
If they don't like the price and if you can't prove it and they didn't see it, they
So
want
do
to
you have
see
to also
everything.
keep receipts as well as the pictures?
They want you to.
And obviously, you don't want to keep it in the house, right?
Right. And then now you have to keep a copy. You have to keep it
Right.
somewhere else
like a
just
safe
to be
deposit
sure.
box or something like
Correct.
that. Because
Right.
again, if your house gets destroyed and you've got the documents in your house, chances are they're going to get destroyed. How many people do that? Probably a lot, right?
Yeah.
I documented it. Where is it? Well, let me sift through the rubble here. It's here somewhere. Wasn't that the bedroom over the, because I mean, I've seen, I lived in the Gulf Coast and I was glad that I got out of there before Katrina hit. Because like I said, the destruction there, they talked about the New Orleans area, right? But I mean, really, there was more destruction in other areas. I mean, literally, you had areas like Slidell, that were, obliterated.
Right.
Obliterated. And it wasn't because the levees had burst. That's where like the eye went through, so the wind was going like hell on one side, then the eye went through, it stopped, and then it started going the other. So whatever it didn't destroy on the first pass, it destroyed on the second pass.
And then floods come in
And then the
afterwards
floods come
and clean up
afterwards, right.
clean up the mess. And sometimes you're left with a clean slab
Yeah.
with nothing on
there.
it. Right.
So how do you get around that? If you haven't documented it, you're pretty much, at the mercy of the government at that point, right?
Right.
And FEMA, we know how good FEMA was when it came to, handling Katrina, right?
Right. Now it's a very difficult process. It's a long process. There are people dealing with that for literally years after the event,
Right.
and you can imagine what kind of stress that they're under over all
Oh,
that
absolutely.
time and what
Because it's
happens
not just
to
a
them.
matter of your, getting paid to fix your home or whatever. I mean, you got to deal with the stress from your family. A lot of times you're displaced. You might be living in a hotel, right? It's better than
Exactly.
living in your car. Because actually, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said that after one of the storms, he literally had to live in his car because he couldn't get the insurance company to cough up anything. And obviously, everything he had was destroyed. The bank wasn't there. What do I do?
Right, and most people know if their home catches on fire,
Right.
the insurance company will pay for you to stay in a hotel or somewhere else while your home is being built. When it comes to flood insurance,
Right.
they don't do that.
Right.
There is no additional living expenses, so you have to make do, and obviously that's very difficult when you're not getting paid for your claim itself,
Right.
and you're not getting paid to live somewhere else. Where's that money going to come from?
Well, like I said, when you have a real disaster, like a hurricane or something like that, or a flood, even the infrastructure is all destroyed. I mean, the stores aren't there, the banks aren't
Right.
there. You're basically in the middle of ground zero.
You're having to drive farther. You can't get to a gas station. You run out of gas.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go? Everything's a mess.
So, how much is your book, Mark?
The book is $14.95, and there are different places that you get it. I always
Right.
recommend getting it from the website
Right.
because I have a special reduced price on the website.
Okay, and you can also find out about it on goodbooks.online because we have an entire landing page just for this book. And you'll have a chance to check it out. We've got some sample chapters in there for you. Obviously, as soon as we get this posted, we'll have the interview on there, and you'll be able to point and click to buy the book. Because let me tell you something. For less than $15, I mean, that's a heck of a good insurance policy, in my opinion.
It is. I mean, the information in there. I've had people say it's benefited them thousands of dollars just to read through it and use some of the tips that are in there.
Right.
And some of them can be used in other circumstances, but it is, and it's real life information. It's not theory. It's
Right.
not text.
Right.
It's this is real stories and real experience from both sides of the same job. I mean, I was an insurance adjuster for an insurance company
Right.
for decades before I started being an insurance adjuster for policyholders.
Before you left the dark side.
That's right. That's
And
right.
tell them also, because again, you don't just work with people in Jacksonville, right? I mean, you work with people in all around the country.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Well, we're licensed all over the state, and I've got several adjusters in Florida. But I also have an adjuster in Florida, and I've got an adjuster in Minnesota. And we can assist people in other areas of the country. One of my adjusters is also licensed in Colorado. So there are different places that we can assist people. And even if we're not licensed and can't formally represent somebody,
Right.
we're always available to answer questions that people have about insurance or insurance
Well,
claims.
tell them how to find you. Tell them your website address in case they want to look you up.
Website address is simply www.goldstaradjusters.com. And toll free, they can reach us 800-523-2589.
Okay, and again, the book is called Uncovered, and you can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Good Books Online. And the next thing we're going to cover after a brief commercial pause is we're going to cover the mayhem that can happen to authors in our Writer's Stuff episode today. It's called Caveat Author. We'll be right back.